All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the League Express podcast. My name's Jake Kearnan, and joining me as always is the editor of League Express, Martyn Sadler. Martyn, how's the last 2 weeks been? It's been 2 weeks since we've seen each other.
I've missed you, Jake. Yes, you've been touring Europe, and I've still been in Brighouse here. So you've had a much more interesting time than I have, by the sound of it. But
yes.
Maybe we can talk about that a bit. But yeah, I was really glad that you took the cold weather with you into Europe.
Yep.
You know, you when you left, it was freezing, and fortunately, the weather improved a bit after that.
Absolutely.
So, yes, we've still been quite busy, and we're still putting out, or we have been putting out, League Express and Rugby League World magazine, but now we're pausing for Christmas. We won't have any show out next Monday. Mm-hmm. So that's the important thing. That's Christmas Day, of course. Yep. So obviously we'd like to wish all our viewers and listeners all the very best for Christmas, Jake.
Absolutely, because what Christmas is it this Sunday or next Monday?
Monday, Christmas Day.
Yeah. So this will be our last time recording before Christmas. So Merry Christmas to all of our viewers and listeners out there, and I guess thank you for coming along for the ride in 2023 with us. It's been really fun.
We'll see you in the new year, hopefully.
No, absolutely right.
Great.
But yeah, speaking of Europe, I had the chance to travel around Belgium and parts of Germany over the last 2 weeks.
You've never been there before, have you?
No,
Those places as an Aussie.
No, that's right. And
you went to some pretty, incredibly historic places, didn't you, I believe? Particularly in Berlin.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We went, the trip sort of started, we went to Ghent in Belgium, started in Ghent and then caught a train to Brussels, spent a few days in Brussels, and then, caught a train from Brussels through to Berlin. And, it was a nice mix of seeing the Christmas markets, but also doing some of the historical things as well.
Yes.
Learning about the history of the Berlin Wall. And
you saw the part of the wall that's remaining.
Yeah, that's right. And I think there's so much publicly available that you can go and read about for free, which was nice. But we also did a walking tour around Berlin and learnt about some of the harrowing history.
Yes.
And then when we went to Munich, we also got to go out on a tour to the Dachau concentration camp.
Yeah, gosh, that's horrifying.
Oh, absolutely. And as I mentioned to you before, at the same time we were travelling around, I was watching there was a World War II series on Netflix, and it's a 6-episode series which sort of looks at, I think it's called Behind Enemy Lines or something along those lines, and they've added colour to the vision. So it was an amazing, or not amazing, it was a harrowing experience going to some of these sites and then watching actual footage from back in the days when the US troops relieved all of the prisoners from that concentration camp. And it was a real eye-opener, and you hope history never repeats itself.
Well, you can see what hatred can achieve, can't you? And that's really quite incredible, really, that people could do that to each other.
No, absolutely. And it's probably a trip I recommend to anyone who, hasn't had a chance to do that and you're looking for something or a new country to visit.
Well, I think all young people ought to be given the chance to realise what's happened before in that terrible period in history. And, the more people who know about it so that we can avoid it happening in future, the better.
No, absolutely right. And, also learning about how important those allied partnerships were back in the day. Without, I guess, the US helping alongside the Brits, it could have been, much worse. And obviously it was terrible what happened, but
indeed,
you can only imagine how much worse it could have been.
Yeah. And Rugby League sounds a bit mundane compared to all that, doesn't it? But actually there's been a lot of things happening in Rugby League that we can talk about. So don't despair if you're watching this. We're not just going to talk about Berlin and Germany and so on. We are going to get on to the subject of this podcast, which of course is Rugby League, Jake, isn't it?
Absolutely right. And we've had...
I don't suppose you saw much Rugby League, though, on your trip, did you? But
no, I tried to keep in the loop as much as I could, thanks to our trusty mobile device. It's quite easy these days, isn't it? But, I guess a few talking points that happened that we haven't covered in the last 2 weeks. I guess off the bat, let's quickly cover the Golden Boot Award. I guess the winners. James Fisher-Harris won the men's Golden Boot Award. No real surprise there. I think you and I both picked him to.
We did,
to win.
and I think he's the first prop forward to ever win it, isn't he?
I believe so.
It's normally won by a back or a hooker, but congratulations to him. Absolutely tremendous, and his winning of the Golden Boot we used to run the Golden Boot ourselves here, but we sold the intellectual property to the international governing body of Rugby League. And when we had it, we used to give it to the best player in the world. The international body has changed the rules, so it's the best player in internationals that were played during the year. And that's changed the Golden Boot a bit because, quite frankly, if you were giving it to the best player in the world in 2023, you would have given it to Nathan Cleary, wouldn't you? I think, because the way he won the grand final for Penrith was absolutely a once-in-a-generation sort of a thing. Yeah. But having said that, Fisher-Harris, on the new criteria, I think Fisher-Harris really deserved it and, had a terrific series in the Pacific Cup with New Zealand. And I was delighted to see him win it, to be perfectly honest.
No, absolutely. Yeah, much deserved, especially after that historic win over Australia where, Fisher-Harris was, a man possessed through the middle of the field.
Absolutely, 30 points to nil. Biggest ever defeat Australia suffered, yes.
Absolutely.
I mean, gosh, they'll bounce back from that next year, make no mistake about that.
No, I hope so. And we also had Georgia Hale win the Women's Golden Boot Award.
Yes. Great to see her.
You sort of picked her as well, I think.
Yeah, she played in the Women's Super League in this country for Leeds, and it was great to see her doing so well as well, and great to see the Kiwi Ferns beating the Gillaroos. It was a double for New Zealand, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And in the wheelchair, we had Jeremy Borson. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Borson, yeah.
Borson. So, how many? Have we had many wheelchair Golden Boot awards?
No, I think that's probably only the second one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So, no, it's a growing part of the game, isn't it?
No, absolutely.
And congratulations to Jeremy.
Oh, for sure. And I think you and I would both advocate to have the criteria change back to the way it used to be, but it doesn't look like that will be the case.
That's what I would do. But you can't take away from the guys and the women who have won it, can you? And it's great to see that, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Now, in the last 2 weeks, we also had the 44 recommendations be accepted by the RFL that was aimed to make the game safer going forward. I guess what's your initial reaction?
Well, let me ask you, Jake, because you've played the game more recently than I have. Yeah. Do you think tackling below the armpit will make the game safer?
Absolutely not. And
you don't think so?
No, absolutely not. I read through the recommendations and the rule changes, and I think it's nonsense. And I hate to be so anti things that will help the players, but when you think about, and I know from experience just growing up playing football, most of my head knocks or concussions and a lot of my teammates always came from an act in defence, so going low, getting your head in the wrong position,
and getting a knee in your head,
a knee or a hip to the temple, or going
or
around
an elbow.
That's right, or going around a ball runner with a teammate, and then having a head clash with your teammates, that sort of thing. And the thing is, I think that this tackling below the armpit rule will be really tough to officiate. It's going to cause a number of headaches for referees. There's going to be a lot of colourful press conferences from coaches arguing that some tackles weren't below the shoulders or some were. And the thing that worries me is for players, I'll bring up Brandon Smith for an example, who when he runs the ball, he tends to drop his head as he goes into the defensive line. How is a player like Nelson Asafa-Solomona going to be able to get low enough?
Particularly near the try line.
That's right.
When a player like Brandon Smith is heading, 5 metres out, lowers his body to touchdown.
That's right.
How are we going to? It's going to be almost impossible to stop him.
Well, another example is I find the way Jack Welsby runs the ball. He sort of runs very sort of hunched over almost and head down, and he's a shorter player, you would say, in the Super League. How is a big, tall front row or second row going to be able to avoid getting over the shoulder sort of tackles?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about the new rules in one sense is that they won't be introduced into Super League until 2025. Next year, we're going to have them in academy and age grade rugby and in the community game as well. So we will be able to see how they work in that context before they're, the rules are brought into, first grade rugby league in this country. So that's going to be quite important. If they need to make any amendments to those rules, then at least they'll have the chance to see how they operate, won't they? But yeah, and the other thing that worries me about this new interpretation of tackle rules. What happens when we play international games? Because the NRL, so far as I can tell, and you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, the NRL haven't shown any obvious inclination to copy what the RFL is doing.
Yeah, not at this stage, I don't believe.
So if and when we play Australia, perhaps in 2025, what rules will we be playing to? You know, when because it's really important to have, you know, the rules clarified and generally, you know, agreed and accepted, isn't it, for international games? And that's going to take quite a bit of doing, I think.
No, absolutely. And as I said, like, I mean, you would be the same. We're all for protecting the player.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
The reality of the matter is that some of these long-term side effects that retired players are experiencing, it isn't from you know, the one big knockout where they've been out cold and then had to leave the field. It's from the repeated hitting the line, and it doesn't even have to be contact to the head. It can just be the whiplash and the brain moving in the skull and shaking around. It's like, I think the sad reality is anyone that's played rugby league from the age of 5 through till, you know, their mid-20s, I believe that later in life there will be some sort of side effects, whether it's memory loss or some sort of ramifications from playing contact sport.
There might be, but it does tend to differ from person to person, doesn't it? And you know, you find some players who can live till their 90s and be as, you know, unaffected by side effects, you know, as you could imagine, whereas others will start showing side effects at a much earlier age.
Yeah, that's right.
And you know, the thing that strikes me really is, would there be a way, for example, for any of us, you or me or anybody else who wanted to play rugby league, to have a head scan or a brain scan to determine whether our brain was particularly susceptible to, you know, being affected in that sort of way, you know, because as I say, there is a differential. Sorry, I've just got a bit of a cold and a bit of a cough, so so there is a differential between different people, and I think that's quite important.
No, absolutely. One of the things I didn't mind though was, and it's going to be very hard for them to keep a document of this, but the minutes restrictions. So I think they're bringing in a rule that all forwards can only play up to 2,000 minutes in a 12-month period, which equals out to be about 25 full 80-minute games. And then the backs, their minutes restriction will be 2,400 minutes per year. So that's a little bit more. But the way around this is just shorten the bloody season.
Of course it is, yeah. That's really what we need to do. You know, we play 27 games a season in Super League. That's just nuts. We only need to play 22 games. That's 12 teams, home and away.
That's right.
22 matches, and then that gives all sorts of room for other international games and so on. So, for God's sake, let's do that. And let's recognise that if you play fewer games, you'll probably get significantly bigger crowds, won't you? Because people will not... You know, there is a sense in this country that the fans can take games or leave them because the season's so long that it doesn't matter if they miss a few.
That's right.
I always remember going to America some years ago and, you know, staying with a family who were keen gridiron fans in near to Los Angeles. And they used to say, you know, at that time the regular season was 16 games. I think it's 17 now. But, you know, very few games. And they used to say that the great thing about that was you never got the chance to get tired of it. You know, by the end of the season, you were gagging for more. Yeah. And they all rushed out and bought season tickets for the next season as soon as the current season ended. Such was their keenness. Now, you know, you look at the NFL and the average crowd there this season is 69,000.
Just
wild,
isn't it?
It's just incredible. And every club makes a massive profit as well. So... You know, we never learn in rugby league, do we?
No, absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I just think that it'd be a huge benefit for our international game as well. We'd have international fixtures at the end of the year.
Or even mid-year. Yeah.
We'll see what happens. And, I'm looking forward to seeing what impact these rule changes have on our academy and lower grades next year. And... just for an example, like I played, like Rugby Union have done a similar sort of thing, and they've been running that system for a few years now. And I was telling you a couple of weeks back, I played a game for the Didsbury Rugby Club. Would have been a couple of months ago now, and I got a yellow card late in the game for tackling around the chest. And the rule is, in that level, is you have to hit around the sternum area, and they called. Above the nipples or around the chest, that was a head-high tackle. So I was just blown away. I was like, hey, that's a good tackle in rugby league.
Yeah,
a lot of frustration, but what can you do?
Yeah.
Now,
how have the guys playing rugby union, though, adapted to that? Did you find that they had adapted?
I think a lot of the players I played with, they had adapted, but they said that it took a full season for them to adapt. And I think the first real change they made, I think it was anything above the belly button, and that was just too hard.
Oh, gosh,
So they ended up moving it a little bit higher, and I think it's around that sort of chest.
But again, difficult for a referee to, officiate, I would have thought.
That's right. And the thing is, I sort of got a yellow card because I did one earlier in the game too, and then I was trying to lower my tackles, and it was in a try-scoring attempt, so... what was I meant to do, kind of thing. But
just wave him past.
That's right. So I was so frustrated by that. But anyway, now in terms of off-season movements, we've seen a few signings down under. But first, we'll get into what's happening in the Super League. So the Saints have a little bit of a fight on their hands, it may seem, in terms of retaining Jack Welsby. There's been a reported deal that hasn't been confirmed yet. The reported deal is Jack Welsby re-signing until 2028 with a no-break clause, so he can't break that to go and sign for an NRL club. But recent reports circulating around St George Illawarra Dragons showing
they're
a
after
bit of interest.
Yeah, they're after him.
Pursuing him hard.
Yeah. But what Saints have done, if that's true about them agreeing a new deal till 2028... what that's done for St Helens, it's given them the right to a transfer fee if Jack does leave them, and a substantial one as well. So St George or any other club would have to be aware of that and probably would be prepared to pay it, wouldn't they? So, to sign a player of Jack's quality.
Yep, and it's come at an interesting time with young Junior Ramon being deregistered by the NRL. I think that news came through either today or yesterday, following his court proceedings. So he's been found guilty, I think, of an altercation with someone on a roof involving a hammer, I believe.
Yes.
So that's the NRL's policy. So they've stood him down or deregistered his contract. So now the Dragons have a lot more money in their salary cap where they could pursue Welsby.
Oh, yes.
So,
and they are determined. I mean, with Shane Flanagan as their new coach, they are determined to pull away from the bottom. There was 16th out of 17 this year. And, for a club of St George's great history, that's really not acceptable, is it, really? To be honest.
Yeah, absolutely right. And... I mean, it'd be a fitting sort of transition for him. He'd still be in the red V if he went to the Dragons. So he looks good in those colours, you could say. With, similar jerseys. But
well, St George obviously has, links with England, doesn't it? The team called St George, obviously. I mean, I'm not really sure why it was called St George initially, but you assume that it must have been set up by English, emigres, I imagine.
Yeah, I can imagine. We've got, sort of similar with Newcastle. We have so many towns that are named after English cities, and so interesting to see. Nervous wait for Saints fans, but I want to ask you this, Martyn. If you were his manager right now, because he's 22 years old, still quite young, a lot of football left in front of him, what would your recommendation be to him?
Well, it depends on what his personal circumstances are. But what you've got to remember, and this isn't often pointed out, that the Super League does have one enormous advantage in terms of paying for players. And that is that we've got three marquee spots. So St Helens could, in theory, pay Jack Welsby £1 million a year and only a very small part of that would count on the salary cap. So, the English clubs, in theory at least, with those marquee player possibilities, if every English club was owned by a guy as, we've just seen Wakefield bought by Matthew Ellis, who's a very wealthy guy, they could buy up Aussie players, to be honest, and put them on marquee contracts for virtually any amount that you like. And actually, if that did happen, the NRL would then have to respond by creating its own marquee player contractual situation. So, it's not quite as straightforward as it looks. But, I mean, I would think that any young player coming into Super League now, it's very clear that the excitement and the glory of playing in the NRL is significantly higher than it is in Super League. You can't really get away from that, and the money generally is much greater. The salary cap is far greater. So, you would want to play there, wouldn't you? And we're seeing a lot of rugby union guys, wanting to come over now as well down in the NRL. I noticed Caleb Clark, the All Blacks winger, who's a really good winger actually, has been training with South Sydney and saying it's his ambition to play in the NRL one day.
And to me, that's sort of amazing that even All Blacks are looking at coming across.
Well, their game is, it's a bit in the doldrums, isn't it, in the southern hemisphere rugby union? You've seen the disastrous performance of Australia in the World Cup and the Eddie Jones farce, really, and it's really put rugby union in Australia on the back foot. But the trouble is, Australia and New Zealand in rugby union terms are just linked, aren't they? If Australia goes down the tube, then New Zealand is isolated, really. And, they've got the All Blacks, but not much underneath it, really, to be perfectly honest. And the NRL competition is forging ahead. I mean, I think they ought to have a second team in New Zealand, for example, based in Christchurch. And maybe they will do that one day. But I think the NRL is forging ahead. I mean, obviously, one symptom of that is the trip to Las Vegas next March. Peter Vlandis, is whatever you think about him, he's ambitious. He is ambitious on a big scale. Not just, he doesn't just want rugby league to thrive in Australia. He wants to internationalise the NRL competition. Obviously, a lot of people are saying that's to get more gambling revenue into the sport. But if that revenue is there and available, then for goodness sake, grab it. If you possibly can.
Absolutely. And they've been ramping up their advertising and marketing of the game. I know over the past couple of weeks they had, for instance, Billy Walters and Aaron Woods attending the Vegas Raiders game. They spoke with the sideline commentator during the match. I believe they went up and into the broadcast booth or one of the post or pre-game shows with former Patriots tight end Rob Gronkowski, who's one of the greatest tight ends of all time, and he had a Manly Sea Eagles jersey on, talking to a few of the rugby league or NRL boys.
That's the way to do it, and of course they've got this relationship now with the UFC, which hosts many big events in Las Vegas, and must have a must have a tremendous database, I would think, of fans who they can market the games to. So, the NRL is saying they're hoping to get 40,000 people there. It's a 69,000 stadium, I think. But I would hope they'd get more than that. And I think they've sold about 20,000 so far, haven't they? And, we're probably 2.5 months out yet, so that's not a bad achievement so far.
Yeah, hopefully we can have a few more tickets sold in the next couple of months. I'm sure they will sell. But we've also had some other news today. Adam Fanua-Blake, he's officially signed with the Cronulla Sharks from 2025 to 2028. I think the Dragons missed out. I think maybe the Bulldogs might have also been chasing him. Huge signing for the Sharks. Yeah,
it's something we're not really that familiar with in England. The fact that you can sign a new contract with the club, not for the forthcoming season, but for the season after that. You know, after the 1st of November. You know, you wouldn't get that announced here. You know, but yeah, a great signing for the Sharks. You know, and they've, I mean, they've performed really well in the last few years. They've been getting into the playoffs, but when they've done that, they've not really got beyond the first round, have they? They've struggled to, you know, this year they finished 6th and they lost at Newcastle in the first round. I think it was it? And you know, they lost at home to Sydney Roosters, didn't they, in the first round? That's correct. And then the previous year they finished 3rd, but lost both games in the playoffs.
Straight sets.
So they just need a bit more mongrel in the middle of the field, I think, to you know, just take that step up to being a genuine title contender, and that's, you know, hopefully what adding Fanua Blake will bring to them.
And it could have been why we saw Matt Moylan sign with the Leigh.
Oh, yes.
Freed up a bit of cash for
I'm
Sharks.
sure that's right, yeah.
So, yeah, very interesting, and I'm sure he'll go well. But there's also been reports over the last week or so that Jarome Luai's accepted a 5-year, $6 million deal with the West Tigers.
Well, at the moment he's in the cooling-off period, isn't he, where it's not finally confirmed, because under the new NRL rules, a player has 10 days, I think it is, to think, you know, having agreed to a deal, does he really want to go through with it? There's no indication that Jarome Luai doesn't want to go through with it, but, you know, we've got to wait to have the thing finally confirmed.
That's right. And you think about a player in his position, at his age, he's achieved so much. Like, he's won 3 premierships, he's, you know, represented the Blues, represented Samoa, got to a World Cup final. You know, you can't hold a grudge against him for wanting to chase the money.
Oh, no. Good luck to
life.
him. You know, good luck to Jarome. And, you know, I really hope that he can help bring about a West Tigers revival, because I'm really quite a West Tigers fan.
Yeah.
At heart. You know, I think it's a really interesting club, and I'm a great fan of Benji Marshall, of course, as well, as a player, of course, but hopefully as a coach he can, you know, transform their fortunes. And, you know, I think it's going to be a real interesting time over the next, you know... And, of course, they've at West Tigers, they've had a brand new administration coming in. They've voted out the old one, and
about time.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've been, you know, unfortunately, the old administration were associated with failure, and they've now brought in Shane Richardson, who's had great success. Excuse me, with many other clubs, and hopefully you can replicate that with West Tigers. Let's see.
No, absolutely right. And one of the things I don't think Penrith are going to be too affected by this. We saw in the grand final. I mean, this is probably the rare occasion where you see a once in a generation performance from Nathan Cleary. But when Jarome Luai went off the field and Jack Cogger came on, like, the Panthers played better. Cleary took over and Cogger played his role.
Oh yeah,
I think they're going to be just fine.
And they've got Brad Schneider there now, haven't they, from Hull KR this year?
That's right. So they've definitely got 2 really capable backups there that could take
Absolutely.
over. So yeah, really interesting to see. But I tell you what, that's a lot of money for Jarome Luai, and I just wonder whether that's going to reset the market for playmakers going forward. Because I said to my dad, and this is a little bit cheeky, but I said to him, you know, he's getting paid. He's Robin getting paid Batman's salary.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
You know, I think you look at those two and you say Cleary's the one that steered the ship, and you know, Luai was the sidekick. But
well, you wonder what Cleary would be worth, don't you, if he came on the market now?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just hope that this won't impact Ezra Mam's re-signing with the Broncos. I think he's been offered $750,000 a season over a few years going forward. So
absolutely.
Yes, very interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
But we've also had reports that Leigh Leopards and Tristan Sailor, there could be a signing there.
Yeah.
I think he's been given the tick of approval for his visa, so I think if he was to sign with the Leigh Leopards, he'd be a great pickup.
Well, he's got great DNA. There's no doubt about that, is there? From his dad, Wendell.
Yeah.
But he got into a little bit of trouble, didn't he? For I can't now remember precisely what it was, but no, I think he's having seen him, I think he's a potential really promising player.
Well, that was the thing. I think the sort of proceedings he went through with the NRL's no fault stand down policy, I think he actually got found not guilty of whatever the charges were. So, unfortunately, due to that strict no fault stand down policy, he missed like a season, and then the Dragons sort of gave up on him. The Broncos threw him a lifeline, and he was a huge reason for why the Broncos were able to keep winning games through that Origin period, because he came in and played. I think he had like a man of a match performance in one of the games. Can fill in at fullback and in the halves, and
in other words, great signing for Leigh.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Leigh are really pushing on, aren't they? They're not satisfied with being fifth in the table and winning the Challenge Cup. They want to win more.
Absolutely. And, I sort of think, I look towards next year, look at some of the great signings that Hull KR have made, and now it's like, well, Leigh have signed Matt Moylan, and if this does go through, they'll be even better as well next year. So, really looking forward to seeing how that all pans out. Also, just want to touch on, in your column, you suggested that we should look at including the World Club Challenge.
I think so. In Las Vegas,
fixture.
Yes. I think well, that's the obvious thing, isn't it? Because Las Vegas holds so many World Championship events in boxing, UFC, and so on.
Yep.
That, to have a World Club Challenge title match there would make enormous sense to me, I would have thought. And if Wigan and Penrith, for example, had been going in 2024, I'm quite sure that both clubs would have taken loads of fans there.
No, absolutely right. And there's no reason why it couldn't be included in
not at all.
Future fixtures.
No,
I think
not
it's
at
a
all.
4 or 5 year partnership they've struck up with Allegiant Stadium over there. So, yeah, interesting to see going forward what will happen. And it's around the same time as well. So, a few weeks apart, I believe.
Absolutely,
so,
yeah.
It could be done.
Yes.
Now, the Leeds CEO, Gary Hetherington, he has come out and said he's in support of the Magic Weekend change. He believes it won't be as bad as fans think. It's probably not a surprise someone from Leeds saying
he's very keen to sell out the first day. And I think the capacity at Elland Road is obviously a lot less than at Newcastle. It's 37,890 officially. And when you think about it, there are examples where we've had more than that figure at the first day of the Magic Weekend. So, I mean, in that sense, if we could sell out the Saturday games, that would be a great look, wouldn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope, for the sake of Magic Weekend going forward, that fans still get behind it.
So do I, yes.
Because it's a great fixture. And
It
it's something
is.
the
A
NRL has
great
copied
event.
off the Super League. And, it's something that we look forward to back
But
home.
I do think it's a bad move to move it to August. But, that they've done that in order to accommodate the Challenge Cup final in June, which I think is also a bad move. But that's what IMG have, suggested to the RFL, and the RFL have taken that on board, and I just don't think that's the right thing to do, personally.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Martyn, it's been a big year in terms of the sport in both hemispheres, and it's probably a good time to look back at some of the memorable moments that have happened over 2023. If you could sort of, nail down 3 key moments or even just the best moment of the year, what would it be for you?
One of the best moments of the year came near the start of it, when Saints beat Penrith in the World Club Challenge. That late field goal by Lewis Dodd was magnificent, and St Helens celebrated long and hard after that, and I think they deserved to celebrate. It was a fantastic achievement, and I was absolutely thrilled by it. And obviously Penrith will be coming next year to get their own back, won't they?
Yeah.
They obviously were shocked. I think the second massive thing was Leigh Leopards winning the Challenge Cup. That was, and especially the way they did it, Golden Point time, fabulous game, and Lachlan Lamb, putting the field goal over and winning the Landstod Trophy. That was absolutely magnificent as well.
Yeah.
And I think the third thing was the tour by Tonga, which was historic. It was the first time ever that Tonga have had a tour, or any Tier 2 nation has had a tour of this country, and it didn't quite work out for them because obviously they lost 3-0, but it gave England a chance to show what they could do under Sean Wayne. There was a bit of bad feeling between the two teams, and I think that sort of was a bit unfortunate, really, to be perfectly honest. But it was great to see England giving opportunities to players like Mikey Lewis, who played in those first two tests and certainly played extremely well, scored an absolutely wonderful try, of course, as well.
Yep.
And Tom Johnson playing for England, after so many years, of terrible injury problems and so on. So, I thought those were probably the three things that stood out for me. And the other, excuse me, I've just got this chestiness, but the other thing that we'll always remember the 2023 season for is that it was James Roby's last season. And that's, again, a historic, really, end to a absolutely wonderful career. And, my best wishes go to James and his family for a very happy Christmas this year. And, we all wait to find out what his future plans are. I obviously hope he's going to stay in rugby league in some capacity, but who knows what he's going to do. But whatever he does, I hope he's tremendously successful, as much as he's been as a player. And the final thing to mention, Jake, we're having this discussion on December the 19th, 2023. Exactly 4 years ago to the day, on December the 19th, 2019, an email dropped into my email inbox to say that Rob Burrow had been diagnosed with motor neuron disease. And that was one of the worst emails I've ever received, really, in terms of the news that it gave. And it's so... I struggled to believe it. And, such a wonderful young guy who'd had such an incredible career, who had retired quite recently, to be struck down by that terrible, terrible disease was absolutely shocking. And since then, of course, we've seen the incredible efforts of Kevin Sinfield, who surely does deserve a knighthood for what he's done. But Rob Burrow put out a tweet or an ex-post the other day saying, he's still here and still feeling okay. And that's so great to see, because I'll tell you, a very close neighbour of mine where I live last Friday night died from MND after a struggle against it, and he was diagnosed actually after Rob was diagnosed, but didn't survive for as long. And it's a terrible condition, and Rob is such a fighting spirit, Rob Burrow. And he's got such a wonderful family as well. I think, that it's just quite incredible that it's so good to see him still here, still with us, hopefully for many years yet. And his family, his wife Lindsay, is just the most incredible woman. And I think if we are wishing people the compliments of the season, a happy Christmas and happy New Year, the Burrow family is the one that I'd give that message to most of all.
No, absolutely. And we sort of commend them for all the great work they've done in spreading awareness.
Oh,
I'm sure there's been a tremendous
incredible
sort of benefit to that awareness and spreading the awareness for that cause, and the amount of fundraising they've done for it as well. We can only hope in the future we can sort of have a cure for it.
Well, let's hope.
It's just one of those diseases, isn't it? That
it's a dreadful thing,
and
but I mean, Rob has just shown incredible spirit, and which he did when he played the game, didn't he? He was an extraordinary player.
That's right.
One of the smallest guys who's played the game, but showed enormous bravery and courage, and it's just life is desperately unfair, isn't it? Really.
No, absolutely right. A lot of the moments that you've just raised there were in my sort of top 3, top 5 as well. The only one I will include from the Southern Hemisphere is, I'd say, the revival of the Warriors.
Absolutely.
The past 12 months, and the revival of the game almost in New Zealand, and how well it's done.
Incredible. Yeah, that's been the story of the NRL in a way, isn't it? And there's so much potential in New Zealand for rugby league, in my view. And, the way the whole country got behind the Warriors, it certainly rivaled the All Blacks. And, I hope that the NRL isn't completely diverted by its Las Vegas adventure, that it does keep its eye on New Zealand and consolidates its position there.
No, absolutely right. And it'll be. I hope they can keep the momentum going forward next year. I'm sure they will. They've got a great future under Webster at head coach there, and obviously Fanua Blake's going to be a huge loss going forward, but I'm sure they'll replace him.
I'm sure they will. And just one thing, talking about clubs reviving, we've got League Express this week. The front page. That, of course, is Craig Lingard on the front page, the coach of Castleford, and there's a fascinating interview with him in the paper this week. And if you read it, Jake, I think you would probably agree that it's one of the most. We better stop this fairly soon before I collapse. But it's one of the most incisive coaching interviews that we've had in the paper for a long time, and. I think hopefully things at Castleford will be looking up. They've got a major new investor coming on board. They've got a new coach who I think is a very intelligent guy, and I think we might be surprised at how well they do. Of course, they play Wigan in the opening game of the season, so that's talk about being thrown in at the deep end.
Yeah. No, absolutely right. And if you do want to check that out, whether it be online or grab a copy from your news agency, but go online to the www.totalrl.com/shop, and you'll be able to order a subscription on there.
Yeah, I'll just mention 2 other things in League Express this week. There's a wonderful interview under the Rugby League Heroes banner with Phil Sigsworth, who, of course, was a great player in Australia, but came to Hull and coached Hull for a while. But there are some really fascinating things that great questions that Rich de la Riviere asked him, and great responses, and one of the best interviews that Richard's done. And also, we've got the annual Christmas quiz in League Express this week. So anybody who is feeling a bit overfed on Christmas Day or Boxing Day and who wants to sit back and test themselves on their knowledge of rugby league, it's there, 100 questions, and just see how many you can get right. Yeah. You'll find it a lot easier if you've got a rugby league yearbook to do that, because it's all about the 2023 season. Yeah,
right. And people can still order that from the website as well, the yearbook?
Oh, yes, of course. Yes. Going to totalrl.com/shop. Yeah. And the yearbook is now out, and hopefully people are starting to receive it through the post. It was posted out last Thursday. So hopefully it's dropping into people's letterboxes as we speak.
Great little Christmas present.
Yeah.
So all right, guys, we might wrap it up here. Is there anything else you'd like to get into?
No,
Martyn?
I don't think so. I think we've just about covered everything that we want to for the time being.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I believe we may not record next week, depending on what happens. If there's big news, major news, we might drop an episode.
Yeah, maybe next Wednesday. Who knows?
Yeah, but with Christmas and Boxing Day being around, the days we usually record, we'll play it by ear and see what happens. But if not, we'll be back probably the week after.
And I'm hoping I'll have recovered from this nasty cold. I actually went to a party for all my grandchildren on Saturday, and I think that's where I picked up this chesty cold, and it's a bit annoying, but that's just one of those things. I'm sure I'll be okay soon.
Well, the weather's getting colder, people are catching up, and hopefully you can shake it before Christmas Day. And
let's hope.
Eat yourself to sleep almost.
Let's
load up
hope,
on food. Yeah.
Anyway, it's a pleasure to see you again, and it's we'll look forward to 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect, Martyn. Well, thanks, mate, and Merry Christmas to all of our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, and we'll see you all next year.
Perfect. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.